Okay, hi, I'm Rachel Torrance, and myself as well as Emily Brinza are here to present. We're very excited to share some practical strategies, some research behind puberty, and a whole lot of behavior stuff. So again, we do have a PDF version of this, and we're happy to share the slides. You can send me the email, rachel@accessingabilities.com. So a little bit about us. Both of us work at Accessing Abilities, which is an ABA company. We implement applied behavior analysis, which is the science of human behavior, and we work to change desirable behaviors and target teaching new skills, and we use a specific approach, and we're highly trained in that specific approach. Both Emily and I are also intervention specialists. Emily currently works, and I have worked extensively in the school district setting. And so we bring our experience from both the teacher perspective as well as the behavior analytic perspective with tonight. I'm also a mom, and a lot of these things I've picked up along the way with my own kids, or rather I've implemented strategies with my own children as well. They are neurotypical, but it's brought a really nice perspective. So here's our titles as well as our contact information. Accessing Abilities was recently acquired by Cultivate, so we're now part of a larger umbrella organization. We're the first in Ohio, and we're very excited to be part of a larger organization. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Hi, my name is Emily. I have been working with Rachel for about 4 years. Through that time, I am starting to become and sit for and learn everything that there is to be a behavior analyst. So hopefully soon, very soon in the future, I will be able to be a behavior analyst and do this full time. Yeah, I guess
which would be awesome. So before I forget too, as the presenter, I personally cannot see the comments. So I'm going to rely on Wendy and Emily. We do want to be able to answer questions. So guys, like this is as formal as it needs to be, as informal as it needs to be. We also want to make sure to meet your needs. So please put questions in the comments, and we can try and address those and build those questions in to the talk as well. So here are the objectives tonight. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Wendy, we do have an hour, right? Just so I can gauge the time. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So today, after attending this conference or this talk, you will be able to have built your understanding of key characteristics of autism and how those characteristics play a role in socially significant behaviors. These are a lot of terms that we're going to go over at the beginning as well. And you'll be able to provide a description of puberty and puberty's potential effects for people with autism, and also identify at least 5 strategies or resources to assist in behaviors for the teenage years. Emily, do you want to review the agenda?
Sure. First, we're going to do a brief review of autism spectrum disorder, as well as some of the behavioral terms that you might hear throughout the presentation. Then we're going to go over an introduction of puberty and potential specific needs related to autism spectrum disorder in the area of going through puberty. Then we're going to take a large chunk of time and talk about puberty-related strategies and how you can help your child navigate through this time. A lot of changes and a lot of different things that are happening, and we want to be able to give you those strategies to help you lead your child and be most successful with your child as they're going through these weird changes. Then we're going to have share some additional resources, and then we'll do some question and answer at the end.
So a very brief disclosure, we do need to say this and emphasize that we can't provide individual recommendations. We also can't consider somebody who's attended this as now trained in those specific strategies. Our goal is to educate you, perhaps help you understand your current little one or the clients or the students that you work with, as well as potentially what could be to come, and also maybe where to look for additional strategies or things that you can try within the scope of yourself, but that's not in a formal treatment setting. Okay, so quick background on autism. So if a child or adult is diagnosed from the medical world, which is different than the educational diagnosis, but in the medical world, the diagnosis typically comes with either the ADOS testing or the ADIR. And in order to qualify as an individual who's on the autism spectrum disorder spectrum, there is going to be some form of communication deficits, social interaction difficulties. Those symptoms must be present in the early developmental period. You may see restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. That might be a self-stimulatory behavior. It might be something more of a ritualistic, we need to follow this daily routine in this particular order, and if not, I have a hard time with it type of routine. Those are just two examples. And those symptoms must cause impairment in functioning across a few specific domains, like, for instance, language, independence, and things like that. And it's not related to an intellectual disability, which is more along the cognitive realm. Those with autism might also have an intellectual disability, but they might not. And as we know, it's a spectrum. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is we're going to be talking about high functioning, low functioning, all different ages. Obviously related to puberty, but we do want to make sure to not target a specific functioning level, because every person, disability or not, we're all different and we all have our unique characteristics. So we want to kind of address all of those differences too. And that being said, so this is how one might qualify as someone with that diagnosis. And, we all have behaviors. We all have desirable behaviors. We all have interfering behaviors. And just because one has autism, that does not mean that they're, like, let's say for these two pictures, there's a little one crying, there's somebody having a tantrum. Those don't happen necessarily because of autism, but we may or may not see those behaviors and that person has autism, and how we're going to treat those behaviors might be different if it's someone with autism, if that's become a ritualistic behavior, for instance, or if there are deficits in language that might play a role potentially in why those behaviors happen. But first and foremost, I don't want you to think that that necessarily they engage in behaviors because they have autism. I have 2 neurotypical kiddos. Trust me, these have been my kids. And with one of them, at one point, it was pretty much a socially significant behavior, but I implemented some behavior strategies, and it didn't happen for a long period of time, many years or many months, but there were some behaviors that were quite reinforced and all that, and they became powerful. But this isn't the only piece to somebody with autism. And I really want to emphasize that, right? Like, a lot of times I'll see on social media or talk to families at intake, and people are relaying those behaviors as because they have autism. No. Yes, they have autism, and yes, they have those behaviors. They may or may not have happened, if you know what I mean. It's not necessarily a correlation, but it does complicate things too. And it does create potentially more ritualistic behaviors and things like that. So I just kind of want to share that piece. When we're talking about behavior, it's the activity of living organisms. It's something that somebody does. And most of the time, a behavior is either respondent or operant. Respondent is not in their control. If you think of a respondent behavior, it's like the baby's reflex when they're first born and they know how to have the nipple suck. Or if you've ever gone to the doctor and they're shining the light in your eye to see if the pupil goes up or down. I never know which one it does, but the way that pupil's responding is is a respondent behavior. I'm not telling my pupil, or I'm not making that thing go in and out, right? Up and down and larger. It's reacting to that light. Or like when they hit your knee and there's that reflex, right? That's usually a respondent behavior, and I'm not in control of it. An operant behavior is the opposite. It's a behavior that's learned. It's somebody is in control of that behavior. And you don't need to know a lot of this, like the details of it. And today's talk is really not about like the details of why the behaviors happen, although it is important to address that if it's an operant behavior, it's a learned behavior. And that behavior is learned because of consequences, and that environment plays a role. So we have a behavior in the middle, and we have the antecedent is what happens prior to the behavior happening. It could include the people around, how you're feeling, the time of day, the actual environment, who is with you. Are you alone or are other people with you? It could be somebody giving you a demand. It's time for dinner. And then the consequence is what happens afterwards. That's either a desirable consequence or not, but it shapes that behavior in the future. And the key takeaway of this particular slide is that if a behavior is in control of the person, then it's an operant behavior. And we could potentially shape that behavior and reinforce the right stuff, reinforce what we want to see more often, and no longer reinforce the interfering behaviors. It's also important to note that consequences affect behavior. And so if that behavior is reinforced, we're going to see that behavior go up more. And a lot of times we get called in where it's an interfering behavior. We figure out the why the behavior happens. And we then develop a treatment plan where we no longer want that yucky interfering behavior to be reinforced. We want to see it go down. But at the same time, we want to see desirable skills go up and potentially other ways of getting those behavioral needs met. And so when we're developing a positive support plan, we are considering those consequences and reinforcement. And even with puberty, if it's like putting the deodorant on, right? We're going to want to talk about the consequences of it. I mean, wearing deodorant is something that's really, as long as if it's a need, right? Like wearing deodorant might be something that client wants or your child needs to have. And so we might need to teach the skills on how to put the deodorant on, but we're also going to want to talk about why and the consequences. And we're going to want to give lots of attention for them doing it as independently as they can. And for smelling really good. I'm literally working on this right now with my 12-year-old. He needs some prompts. We wear the deodorant after showers. And then in the morning, Jacob, did you put the deodorant on? Yes, I did. And so sometimes I'll just randomly on variable intervals, I'll go up to him. You smell good, kiddo. Awesome. And I'm making sure to reinforce the desirable behaviors. That way we can see more of it. It's just one example. And when we are addressing socially significant behaviors, those are behaviors that are getting in the way in life. Those are the behaviors that are interfering with the ability to socialize with others, the ability to perhaps be independent as possible, or attend the events in life that you want to, such as going to a restaurant, attending church or synagogue. And, when a behavior is interfering, it's worth addressing if it's getting in the way with those things. Pretty much short and sweet on that one. And the last part about this one is if it's a behavior, so think about this too. Like if it's a behavior that's interfering and it's getting in the way with life, it's a socially significant behavior. If we're going to address the behavior as the behavior analyst, we go in and we quantify it, we identify what might be reinforcing it and the why. But then we also say, okay, well, is it door letter A, where it's a behavior that the individual has in their repertoire. They know how to do it. We're just not seeing enough of it. Like, let's use the example of Jacob and his deodorant. It's totally my kiddo. Hopefully he's outside playing right now. So if he's not wearing deodorant enough and I'm going up to him and I'm smelling that there's the stinky 12-year-old stinks, I might say to myself, okay, is it door A or is it door B? Door A is he knows how to put deodorant on. He's just choosing not to, or he's forgetting, right? And I just need to amp up that reinforcement so that we see more of yummy smelling Jacob and wearing deodorant behaviors. Door B would be he doesn't know how to put it on. There's something going on where we need to reteach it, right? And maybe figure out the why this isn't happening as much. And we might take a different route to addressing those behaviors. a lot of what we're talking about today, once we get to the strategies, which is pretty close, like I just wanted to give a really solid foundation of some of the terms that we're going to be using. But when it comes to puberty and behaviors that are showing up as a result of puberty, we do need to have this door frame. And we need to think about, is this something that they know how to do and we need to amp up the reinforcement so we see more of the desirable? Or do we really need to teach it? And what strategies do we need to use to teach it? We have a lot of strategies to share today. So a quick intro to puberty, right? We all remember, some friends getting their periods before others. Do we wear a bra? What kind of bra? Is it bothering you with the metal behind? So we go for the sports bras, the yucky pimples, and then what soap are we going to use that's going to be effective? It's a really tough time. It's a really hard time in life, and you've got the hormones to go with it. So the definition of puberty is when the boy or the girl becomes sexually mature, and it refers to that physical change in the body. What do we see? The breasts, perhaps in a girl, the breasts start blooming. You might see the facial hair. There's usually a growth spurt involved. For the boys, their voice might drop. Their also facial hair is happening. Other body hair is growing. And these are usually the times that it happens, but obviously that's bell curve, right? It could happen as early as 8 or 9. And these are just the roundabout times. But it's an endocrinological, I cannot say this word, endocrinological event. It involves hormones. And there's this surge that happens. And if you guys could think back to when you were their age, and perhaps it was an emotional roller coaster, which is what that picture represented here. Or perhaps it was a time of confusion or a time of jealousy. If there were friends that were more or less developed than you, there might have been some jealousy there. There could have been some sleeping pattern difficulties. And add on top of that, the ASD diagnosis that could lead to a lot of confusion, not having the language to expressively communicate what's going on within your internal body. And we, as the people outside, like as mommy and daddy, you might know what's going on, but sometimes it's hard too, if they're not able to label or expressively communicate what's going on inside, or perhaps ask questions. And that could add to the complexities of the time of puberty as well, and the emotions. So there's these hormone surges, right? And these hormone surges cause all these different changes in those things that we talked about: the facial structure, the voice, the body, the metabolism. I learned through doing this talk that the circadian rhythm sleep changes actually change as a result of puberty. And the kids will naturally go to a different bedtime. And it's a huge component. Here I am blaming it on technology. Oh, my friends are all on Fortnite. I want to stay up. Or my kids happen to be remote learners, so they don't have to wake up as early as they would have if they were taking the bus. So I've been letting them stay up a little late. But here I'm reading this going, oh, and that's probably also playing a role. My 9-year-old, who's going to be 10 next month, my 12-year-old are likely, and they're totally right here, right? Maddie's going to be 10. And again, they're neurotypical. But I'm seeing a lot of these things that Emily and I read about in preparation for this talk, I could relate to with my kids. So anyways, the littles are going to bed later and later. And I'm now noticing that there's definitely environmental components. We don't have to go to bed as late because we can sleep in a little bit because they're virtual learners, and sun's out a little bit longer. But it's likely also because of those sleep patterns. And so as a mommy, I need to then reassess and go, okay, but are they getting enough sleep? And actually they kind of are, so I'm okay with it. But if they weren't, I would address it, because then it becomes a socially significant behavior. They're exhausted throughout the day, right? Then it could affect their learning. So back to this. This is the exact same slide, except we now titled it Puberty and ASD. So again, the child is turning the pubescent age and they have autism, and they exhibit these specific characteristics which caused the diagnosis of autism. It's going to add to the complexities of puberty. Our role today is to make sure that you guys understand that. And we're going to give you so many strategies and so many resources on how you could potentially help to address those behaviors. And just survive. Could like break out into I will survive, right? Because we want the kids to enjoy this time and this happy time. And it's just one of those times in life, but let's try to give them the tools so that they can be as independent and they can live the lives that they want, and we can all meet our needs, right? All right, go Emily. I've talked enough. This is the fun stuff now.
In this first section, we're going to talk about addressing new health and hygiene needs that may come up. And this goes from just washing your face another time of the day right before you go to bed to feminine hygiene and menstruation. So these are some a lot of the interventions that we generally use to introduce these new events and these new items kids need to do and add to their schedule. We use generally the same, we use the same interventions. I know I've used that word many times, I apologize. So we're gonna use something that is a lot like what is on the side. It's a task analysis of the steps that you need. So this is very hard to do when I'm not like in control. Can you go to the next slide?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing is we'll work on washing more. Generally, when you're going through all of these changes, you want to wash more, whether that's your face, your hands, you want to brush your teeth more, you want to make sure that you're clean and you're dry. And so a lot of times what we do is we will use videos or pictures and put them on kids' phones, and then they can set it up just kind of right by the sink, and they can use it and press play and wash their hands, and they'll get that video modeling. And that way the phone comes with them wherever they go, because teenagers and phones, I teach elementary school and I have a student who has a phone and it is always in her hand. So it's just that cell phone is now becoming a tool for all of us to help out kids who may just need a little bit more prompting.
And it could lead to them being more independent than a picture schedule. Like we absolutely want to use what we know works. So if your child uses a visual schedule at school, consider that at home. And that's absolutely an option, just like the picture here with the washing of the hands. But a video model might be something else to consider, because now, if you're out in the community, you don't need to have that visual schedule with you. Of course, you could always take a digital picture and have them put that on their phone, but it makes them, it helps with looking more neurotypical, and it's not as obvious as having that visual schedule. So that's something else to think about too. But we definitely want to make sure to pick the strategy that works and that's used before. So try something, if they use visual schedules, great, you could use that, but also consider a video modeling. And video modeling can be used with lots of different areas as well.
Especially with brushing teeth. I have used several different apps for iPhones or Androids or tablets where the kids can just go in the bathroom and it walks them through brushing their teeth, and then they can earn rewards for the amount of times they brush their teeth, how the duration of them brushing their teeth. So there are things online and they are free as well, which is great. This is just another example for brushing teeth. It's also another kind of task analysis of it that has pictures and words. And then on the right, there's one for washing face, which is just words.
I actually use this one. These are both from from clients that we've worked with. And this one worked great. It's more of I think these are symbol sticks or board maker. And it worked great for this particular learner. For this one, he was much more high functioning. And a teenager and we needed to work on the washing of the face. And so I actually had him with my iPad. I brought my iPad that day, and I know he's done really well with lists and things. So we created this list based on what he was already doing. So I was like, okay, so and so, wash your face. Just show Miss Rachel washing your face. And I was giving him little tricks along the way. We added those in. But rather than me giving him the list in the order of when it needed to go, he went through his routine and we made sure to get his routine on paper. And I literally, it was like a 3x5 card, nothing even fancy. I took it, cut it out. Okay, I laminated it because I have a laminator. It's way too fun to play with. And that way it's waterproof. But we taped it up. That was it. And he used those the dry wipe things. So it like comes as a pre-soaped cloth, and he just watered it. So that was his task analysis. Oh, here's a video model of, this is truly from the Gillette like website, I think. Like I found this on YouTube. Should we play it? We're pretty good with time, right? You can hear it, right? Is everyone able to hear it?
A bit longer.
Can you hear it?
Not yet.
Headphones off. Okay, sorry, hold on. Let's try again. Now you should be able to hear it.
First time or you're a pro, we have some tips on how to get a smoother, more comfortable shave. First, hydrate to minimize nicks, cuts, and irritation. Hydrating softens your hair, allowing the razor to glide more easily. Use a facial scrub or wash to remove oil, dirt, and dead skin, preparing your skin for a comfortable shave. Now lather up some shave gel and let it soak in for a minute. Gel improves glide and softens your hairs. Check the lubrication strips. If they look faded or worn, or if the blades feel dull, use a fresh blade. Dull blades can cause nicks and irritate your neck and face. Use light, gentle strokes, letting the razor do the work. The Gillette Fusion Pro Shield has...
Okay, so it's clearly a commercial for the Gillette Fusion Pro Shield. And what I do love about this, though, not only is that it's professionally done, but it shows for the right learner who's going to be able to keep up with the fast pace. It is a little bit faster paced. It does show how to do it and modeling. And then you could always consider adding on a visual as well. Take the steps, break it down. It doesn't just have to be one specific strategy.
And I also like that when I do video modeling, I make sure that it looks like one of my kids. So
I love that.
Kid is, if I'm making a video for a kid who is in middle school, I make sure that it looks like a kid in middle school. If I'm making one for a kid in elementary school, I make sure it looks like the kid in elementary school. Because for me, there is nothing worse than being shown how to do something as an adult and watching a YouTube video of someone who is much younger than I am doing it successfully.
That's a really good point.
So, and that's kind of more of also a peer modeling. A lot of, I know I respond a lot better when it's someone who kind of is my age, is explaining it to me. Or I can see, oh, well, if my peers are doing it, that's how I should do it. And especially when you are this age, when you are a teenager, you're very impressionable, and seeing people who look like you, who are your age, will really kind of, I've learned that helps it's a little bit more dry, gives a little bit more drive and a little bit more meaning to what we're giving the kids.
Great point. Oh, I just thought of something else. I'm sorry, Emily. Also, like, they could be their own video model too. Once they've hit the once they're fluent in performing that skill, they could be their own video model. Okay.
For deodorant, makeup, perfume, and cologne, this is one of my favorite things to teach because I teach in spritzes and I teach in swipes. So I normally put, okay, if you would like to wear perfume, you can only have 2 spritzes, or you can only have 2 sprays. It's really easy to kind of put on an icon as well. So if you have like a picture of deodorant and then you put 2, or a picture of a Axe body spray, you could just put 1 for 1 spray. That's just, it's a nice little visual. Also a picture model for makeup, so you're not wearing too much. Makeup is very hard. It's
so much fun though, but I was totally the one that was guilty of putting way too much. I can't.
So makeup is hard. If I think that the easiest way to do it would probably be a picture model, because you can't really measure anything out. But
good point. Consider that sleep too. There is research out there, and I don't have a quote on what article it was. I could probably find it if anyone wants it. One of the pediatricians that I know had shared it, how there's research that says like to put the tablet away a certain number of minutes prior to going to sleep, because your brain neurons are fried, right? Or the iPad or the video games. And I'm totally guilty of it. Like I actually find, so I'm typically on my iPad or phone, and I find that like if you dim the lights, it might be a little bit better, but they do say that it's better to remove yourself from the devices prior to sleep. Otherwise, it's going to make you go to bed longer. And if you look at that research on how kids in puberty do go to bed later, that's something else to think about, because the device could be adding time onto that as well. And also consider too, if they're sleeping in your bed or not, and this is absolutely a family decision, absolutely without judgment, but consider the quality of sleep and what works for your family. A lot of times when we're doing an intake, we're asking if people sleep in a family bed or not. And if they do, and it's working and they don't want to change it, great, that's fine. But if it's not providing adequate sleep, then it is important to consider looking at where everybody's sleeping and how, and changing some of that environment too, to increase desirable sleep behaviors.
So feminine hygiene is definitely a huge part of developing and going through puberty as a woman. And a lot of the research kind of came back when I was looking at when I was looking at feminine hygiene and menstruation with individuals with autism. A lot of the research came back, and it was definitely a lot of visuals and a lot of social stories. So I read an article, and it said to basically do like a picture schedule, like a picture task analysis on how to change a soiled sanitary napkin. Many people broke it down into very small steps. Some people broke it down into small steps and then were able to make them into larger chunks. They also said to use a social story, and a social story, we're going to talk a lot about this in a little bit, but social stories are generally stories about things that may come up. So for when you're menstruating, sometimes I don't feel good. And then there's a image of a picture of someone feeling ill. My back might ache, my tummy might hurt, and the symptoms of PMS. And then they go through and say, that could be your period. Your period this happens to many, many women. This is okay, and you're not in danger. And these are the things that you may feel scared, and that's okay. Or you may feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. But these are the things that you can do for yourself and be an advocate for yourself. So I don't feel well. My pain is a 3, so why don't I have a heating pad? Why don't I get the heating pad? Or I don't feel well, my pain is a 9. Maybe I should go ask someone for help or someone to give me medication if your child knows that they're allowed to have medication. But just basically how I think of this is how can you break it down into the pieces that your child can understand the most?
And to increase the language too, because it's
yes,
hard
and the
to like
language
identify feelings. Feelings are really hard, but sometimes the 10-point scale or something like that will help to give that concrete understanding of what those feelings might be, and it labels it. Like in this case, it's actually colors, words, and numbers, which I love. This is a good one, Emily. And like it will help for them to understand the language. And the pictures here on the right where it's like my back ache and my tummy might hurt, this is helping to give them the language and helping them to understand what's going on in their body. This is different than a sicky bug, like a stomach bug kind of belly, but we know that it hurts sometimes. Yeah. Also consider, like, for some people, with autism or with people with disabilities, they might need to be directly taught things that other people might just pick up through social media or things like that. So you really might need to take a direct approach, but consider your comfort level with that too. Some families are okay with exposing themselves for the purpose of teaching their kids how to do specific things, and sometimes they're not. Or you might want to use a video model, obviously, absolutely preview it, make sure it's like an appropriate one that's serving the purpose. You might also want to consider, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm just saying consider, because there's options. There's underwear now that might be good when the woman's on their period, or tampons. If cleanliness is hard, a tampon could divert having to do those other things too. So just kind of think about the fine motor skills of your child and what their comfort level is too. So the next section is addressing new social situations, and we're going to talk about like discussing sexual topics, masturbation, touching others, clothing, and teaching about the disability. Should I switch to the next slide?
So first, with discussing sexual topics, a lot of times no one is going to give you a list of what you should and should not say, what is socially appropriate to say. Generally, it's just kind of, we all know, we can kind of sort it in our heads without someone giving us this grand list of don't burp in public, it's bad. Or if you do burp in public, cover your mouth. So what we generally do is we can use something, it's direct teaching. It's basically saying, when you get undressed, you need to get undressed in private. And that is where you get undressed. And that's the only place you get undressed. When you bathe, you only bathe in private. That's the only place you bathe. When you go swimming, you can go swimming in public. And it's okay to be in a bathing suit in public. When you are in public, this is the bathing suit that you are okay to wear, and just kind of sorting that public and private and giving the very direct, concrete examples of, yes, this is okay, no, this is not okay. It was really, really helpful to our kids. There are other things that we use as well, like social stories, rewarding appropriate behaviors, and video modeling. This is appropriate touching and masturbation are huge. With social stories, which is kind of what we read when we looked at the menstruation slide, is I go, when Emily sees a stranger, she can shake their hand, she can give them a high five, she can wave, she can smile. When Emily meets a stranger, it would make this, Emily should wait to get to know that person before she hugs that person. So it's a story about the situation and about what your child should do with the situation. I love social stories.
Should do. Notice she says should do, because you want to teach what we want them to do. It models it. Okay, sorry, I had to add that in.
Okay, I love social stories because it is about the child. It's not about some random person named Emily. It's about me and how I should do something. And when I write a social story, I write in, Emily loves meeting people. Emily loves going to the park and meeting, shaking everybody's hands there. And then you're attached to that story and you think, oh, well, okay, wait, it's a story about me and what I like to do. And I'm a really big fan. So with appropriate touching and masturbation, it can be, how do we touch people? When do we touch people? And how do we not touch people? And that with other people and ourselves. When is it okay for me to touch myself? How is it okay for me to touch myself? This can go with masturbation. This can also go with self-injurious behaviors as well. We won't go into that because that's not where we're heading, but for for both of these concepts too, rewarding appropriate behaviors. If you see your child go up and shake someone's hand, then give them a huge high five, like a smile, a wink, anything. That's how I learned how to shake a hand. When my dad shook my hand and he told me it was a terrible handshake. So I would walk into the room and every time I'd stick my hand out and shake his hand. And as it got better, he would start to praise me. And now that is how I shake. I have a very firm handshake.
You have like one of the best handshakes. I gotta say, like I never remembered this until, and I can't believe it was really 4 years ago that we got to meet and we've worked together for that long. But I remember you having a really good, appropriately firm but good handshake. And like it is sometimes awkward if people don't have like too strong or too light or rock solid.
And that's the rewarding of the appropriate behavior. And then this is just another example of video modeling. It's a very brief video, like with captions as well, on how you should greet other people.
Hey, oh hey! Hey, how are you? Hey! Hey!
So those are that was a very brief example. And it also used those girls they look a little older, I'm not sure. But there are videos of children practicing social skills and greetings online as well.
There's a new program that we've been using within our company too that I want to share with everyone. It's called Everyday Speech. It's really a speech therapy based program, but there's a lot of social language, desirable social skills. We're using it with some of our higher functioning kiddos, and there's like a elementary version and an upper grade version too. So just like Emily was saying, you want to pick someone that's of the similar age group as the learner. One of the things that I love about this one is not only do they teach the appropriate stuff and it's in a very nice sequential order, it's age appropriate with that right language, but they also give a lot of like games and activities to go with it. So you don't have to create those things. It all flows together really nicely. So that's something to think about too. Everyday Speech, it's called. And it's like a subscription. I think overall it's pretty reasonable. A couple other considerations. These are things that have come up from within real cases as well. Is you definitely want to teach the public and private. And for some learners, you know, just like that, we did that sort with this is public, this is private. You might want to zone in on just masturbation behaviors, because what you don't want, even though I know we're supposed to teach what we should want, but just as an example, what you don't want to do is to teach you can masturbate in a bathroom, because then if that client is potentially at work or in school, they go, well, I was in the bathroom, I was able to do it, but that's not the appropriate bathroom to do it in. So you really want to zone in on really specific situations and specific to that learner. Also be highly cultural sensitive. First thing I'll bring up to the parents is, are you, like, what are your thoughts on masturbation? I know this is a weird topic. We're probably desensitized because we do talk about a lot of bathroomy kind of behaviors and stuff, but we want to meet your cultural needs. And if a family has specific thoughts, feelings, beliefs about masturbation, we want to make sure to not overstep and say that it's okay or it's not okay if they feel differently. And I've actually had families that have said, and a true story, you guys, where they said, like, I'm not and this was not a religious thing. This was a comfort level thing for the parent too, where it was, I'm not comfortable talking about it, but Rachel, you as a teacher, you as a behavior analyst, if you are, can you please teach my kiddo this? And so as the professional in there, I'm fine with it, but I really want to be sensitive to the parent and the family background, as well as the individual's backgrounds too. So that's just kind of like my 2 cents on that piece too.
And this last part is about clothing and disrobing. I have my several years of teaching experience. I have had these situations come up way too often. And every time it's pretty much this is private, we have private parts, we don't show our private parts. So it becomes a social story. So in one of the articles, it actually really had some good social stories. And this one is more catered towards clothing and disrobing. My body belongs to me and some areas are not to be exposed in public. Obviously, this is for an individual who is a little higher functioning. These areas are called private parts and includes my genitals and my breasts. It's okay to take off my clothes when I'm on my own at home and will not be seen by anyone. For example, when I like changing my clothes or I'm going to take a bath. Basically, that's, you either teach it through a social story, which I have had great success with, or you teach very much like a black and white situation.
And add in that reinforcement component too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And teaching about disability is an absolutely individual specific thing. You have to know when your child is ready for it. And you might know when the questions come, or you might know when specific concerns come. And it might be at age 5, it might be at age 10, or might be 15 or 30. It really just depends. There's no right or wrong. However, I truly think I learned this stuff from my own children. Their questions my children's questions, not about disability, not about like puberty stuff, but just in general, they've, like, if something comes up, I usually let their questions guide the conversation. Do I have research on this? No, but it's really good practice. It's good mommy parenting stuff too, and being as an educator. So you want to give enough information that meets their needs, but you don't want to give too much information to bring fear or things like that on like sensitive topic kind of stuff, like somebody's sick in the family. If they ask me questions, I'm going to guide it. I would, if I were in a situation where I was ready to teach my child about their specific disability, I would probably do that too. I would also, emphasize the fact, which I've done this with my own children and students alike, like, everybody's different. We all have our unique differences. This is one of them, but this is, and the pros and cons of everything, because, everyone's unique. This particular document, it's absolutely in the references, and I'm forgetting which group. This might have been you guys. I'm sorry, we'll have to check.
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is from the Autism Society. They have an entire manual that you can download called Growing Up Together, Teens with Autism. And there are a lot of different conversations, and it's a great tool. So I highly recommend it. It's absolutely free on the website, Autism Society website. And internet safety can come into play as well, and newer extreme interfering behaviors, just again, depending on the age, depending on the need. You absolutely need, I'm so sorry, this thing keeps coming up, but you absolutely want to make sure that they're safe. One of the tools that I love about directly teaching people types, I think I've had the circles program since I was teaching in the 90s. It concretely teaches different people and who they are in the community. And there's components where I've done sorts and things like that. But I mean, literally, I think if you Google the Circles program, you can find the whole PDF. But it talks about what strangers are. You could create supplemental materials on this. Actually, I think there's an app that Jen Thompson, one of our BCBAs, just found for this for one of our learners. And it's just a great way of concretely teaching safety stuff too. And also potentially having that conversation of significant others, and touching body parts. That could be, when and if appropriate, that's something else you could tie into this program. And another internet safety document we found was this one. This is just like a screenshot of what we found. And there are specific things to consider as well. So that could be a really good resource. And an example from that document is they have this Play It Safe acronym, right? About personal information about what you should do, so that we do want them to always be safe. And, consider your child and what their social needs are. What we don't want ever is for them to say, well, this is a friend and I need a friend and this is who we need to make sure that they know who the safe friend is. Put in rule governance, put in rules that work with your family, work with the needs of your kiddo, and, check in and support. I mean, things come up all the time. I mean, even on social media, like, friends of friends, you have to decide on if you're comfortable with friends of friends being friends with your child, whether they're playing Roblox or on Facebook. Definitely something to consider. And there are great resources there.
With getting older, you're obviously going to be more excited and ready to go into the community. And there are, if you even type in like going into the community or preparing for independence, there are thousands of resources. I found something that I had never seen before, and it's a video. It's a video schedule. So basically, instead of having all icons, some of the events are video. So if you're going to go get a pizza, you go on the bus, and then you're going to scan your bus pass, swipe your bus pass, and then you're going to get the pizza. So instead of just having a picture of the bus pass, you can have an embed a video of someone using a bus pass. So it's kind of a mix between a kind of icon chart task analysis and a video modeling all in one. So this, you don't have to play the video. The video is just of someone swiping a bus pass. I thought that it was very nice because then you're not sitting there, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, because you're giving them the video modeling and you're also giving them the step that they need to take in order to get to the pizza.
Nice. Emotions. There's a lot of buzz right now about mindfulness. And as a yogi, which I picked up yoga probably in 1999, and I never really realized I engaged in mindfulness behaviors without knowing that I was doing mindfulness stuff, even outside of the mat. There are so many amazing programs. I went to put that on there too. Carol Dweck, I'm looking at my bookshelf here. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset, and that was a recommendation from our kids' school in Solon. And it helps to explain growth mindset and how to look at specific situations and grow, use the mindset to build that emotional maturity. And you can also work on specific teenage emotions and teaching emotions. And there are just some really good tools out there. AIM is one that we've adopted recently after going to a training. It's highly behavior analytic and incorporates acceptance commitment theory, as well as mindfulness, as well as applied behavior analysis. And there are some tools in there to help teach how to act in situations and use your emotions and what to do with, like, I mean, one of my favorite is this one here on the right, the chaotic mind. What do you do, like, whether or not the person has anxiety or not, but we all have these thoughts that come up in our mind, and what do you do? And it's coming up with specific strategies to push that thought aside, right? And if you're taking a test, but then you're worried about, I don't know, missing the bus later day or whatever it is, right? Like, move it to the side. And it really does, it teaches some strong, concrete strategies. And it's all about building that, so the psychological flexibility. So the picture here on the left, I'm sorry, it's not a great picture from the screenshot that I did, but it's all about psychological flexibility. And there are tools that could absolutely be used with any age group and any intellectual functioning and language ability as well. Some of the other resources that we found that we wanted to share.
So this video is about an hour, 45 minutes long, and it was one of the best videos that I have seen. The third Thursdays is O'Callaghan Presents, and it's generally just like an idea or a question or a problem that people are having, and they discuss it. And they had two women come on, and they both had children with autism. Both of those children were nonverbal. One was male, one was female. And they went through all of the things that they implemented in their household while their children were going through puberty. And it was a lot of, some of the resources that you have that are in the PowerPoint came from there. And they also have, and she mentions a lot more resources that are available, books and articles. I really think that you should, it's worth the watch, because a lot of it I didn't realize, I didn't even think of before researching everything. But if you're gonna sit down for 45 minutes and do something, this is something that you should definitely watch. It's very good.
O'Callaghan also has a lending library with specific resources in there, and that's an Ohio-based organization. Great resources. And another one is Autism Speaks. Their national organization has a parent's guide to puberty and adolescence for children with autism. Absolutely free, download, and you can use pieces and parts to them too. It's a great resource. The last one is Milestones Autism Resources. I happen to be on the board of directors at Milestones, and they have teen and adult services as well as a help desk. They have a list of resources for agencies to go to, social skills groups and things like that. And they also have a recommended reading list, and you can look up content specific things. I think there was a teen one. So if you want additional resources, you can go there. And I believe there's like links to the Amazon, or the local library probably has a lot of them too. So we'll do the Q&A, but before we do, I just want to share that all of these resources and citations are also here that you guys can absolutely get as well. So we're kind of like down to the minute, but we would like to be able to answer some questions or give you guys some guidance on other resources.
And we've recorded this webinar. And so along with the PowerPoint tomorrow, the recorded webinar is going to be available too. So they'll get that whole list of resources. Does anybody have any questions at all?
Oh, there is one here. Not certain what's available in Summit County, but Cuyahoga County Board of Zeta offers individualized travel training to assist with negotiating the community. Yes, they do. I worked there for a while, and they have for many years, and they have great supports. Absolutely. Ask Summit County, Stark County, and also the school district. And there might be organizations that work through them, but that could potentially be part of a transition plan if your child is on an IEP as well.
Rachel, I get a lot of calls from parents whose sons are entering puberty, and their behaviors are explosive and aggressive. These are behaviors that they've never seen before, and they're putting it down to hormonal. But what can you add to that? What would be your recommendation for parents who are dealing with that?
Definitely rule out whether or not it's operant, like we had talked about, if it's a learned behavior or if there is a hormonal component. Definitely first and foremost, rule out the medical piece. I can absolutely disclose to you that I've had thyroid issues. I'd had mine taken out, but prior to that, and I am neurotypical and had the language, I was able to explain, I feel like a kid's lying right now. Like, hormones absolutely, I mean, these weren't pubescent hormones, but these were hormones, and hormones can play a role. I can't say whether or not those behaviors are hormonal or not. If it's a behavior that was not in their repertoire at all, it's a could be situation. So I would first and foremost rule out the medical component, but then second off, I would say have a professional. I do highly recommend having it be a board certified behavior analyst, because we are highly trained in doing this particular assessment. But other professionals absolutely do it too. They might have a different take on it, different strategies, but a functional behavior assessment is a valuable tool that will help look at the reason, and either a functional behavior assessment or a functional analysis will either directly test or assess and come up with potential reasons why that behavior happens. And if you know the reason why a behavior happens, it can give you better outcomes with how you're going to develop, what that treatment plan is going to look like.
Right.
So I would say rule out medical and then ask for an FBA. FBA can be done by a district, by a county, potentially by a county board of DD. It can be done by an outside ABA agency. Psychologists sometimes do them. Absolutely. BCBAs do them. So
Okay.
that would be a good one. Other questions? Advice on discussing those feelings of curiosity with his friends of opposite sex. 10-year-old boy, pre-puberty, totally unsure hormones. Yeah, I can't give individual specific things. It depends, because they're curious, they're hormonal, and it might be of same sex, it might be of different sex. I think this is my opinion. I think it's valuable to have open discussions if that's something that you're comfortable with. There's a lot of value with that. Also think about how would you do this with a neurotypical kiddo, and what kind of language do you need to get to that goal? You might need to take a different road, but you still want the same goal. You want those appropriate behaviors. So knowing your son or daughter, definitely consider that, and also seek the outside professionals that may or may not work with your team, because then there can be that individualized approach too. And if you have an SLP that you work with, or an ABA company, they can help address those behaviors too. School is a good one too.
Anyone else?
Wanting to sleep? Do they sleep in bed with you now, or they want to? And how do you feel about it? It's individual specific. Really wanted to make sure he didn't feel like it was weird for feeling curious. I just don't want to give too much information. Yeah. It is totally normal and age appropriate at this time. So I think you could engage in those conversations and talk about the body. And with certain kiddos, maybe your son's ready to talk about what it means to have a girlfriend, what it means to have a boyfriend, or, and again, have them ask the question. This is just a Rachel thing. Have them ask the questions, and then it'll guide you to the conversation. So give them enough that meets their needs, but not too much, And it might be multiple conversations over the next couple of years. Some kiddos might be comfortable asking, and some might not. Absolutely. Yeah. So addressing the sleeping in bed with mom, what's the concern with that? Are they all ready? Are you not getting adequate sleep? And I'm going to put my email in here. Emily, if you want to put yours too, it's up to you. But
I liked how you added, Rachel, about repeating it and do it again, because it might take that much processing to have it finally become a habit. Either if it's deodorant or showering or whatever we talked about tonight.
I'm constantly reminding them. Yes.
Well, even kiddos on the spectrum, it might take a while to get all that down to where it's a comfortable habit.
On that note too, like think about the ritualistic behaviors, right? Like if it's somebody who's learned an ABA or what have you, like this is the routine that I follow at night, or this is my showering routine. And now we're adding the deodorant into the routine. The deodorant's different. And if they have ritualistic behaviors that follow with those specific routines, now we're adding something into that behavior change. The behavior chain, and that could be hard. So provide that support, provide that reinforcement.
Well, and you're right.
When you consider what kind of soap it is, what kind of deodorant, do they like it? Like I've had learners that absolutely could, parents said they can't stand the soap. They won't do it. They won't like lather their head, or they won't use, they won't lather their body. And so crazy me's going, well, wait a minute. Well, what could be the barrier? Maybe it's the kind of soap, right? Like I've been at a hotel before and didn't care for the soap, and that changes the whole bathing experience. And when you add in the sensory components, if somebody is uber sensitive in a good way or not to smells or feelings, that could play a role. So maybe they want a poof, maybe they want the soap, maybe it's easier to get to the backside with a poof. So absolutely consider all those things too. It's a lot. I didn't think about that stuff when we made the PowerPoint. Is it appropriate for them to sleep with you occasionally? I'm not so sure I can answer that. I would probably have to check the resources, but I would think that it might be. Probably. Yeah. Yeah, as long as it's not interfering with sleep, like we do every time for whatever reason. I don't even know how this started. Whenever we're at a hotel, my husband and I sleep in the same king size bed every night. But at a hotel, we each get a kiddo and we flip flop every night. So I get a Jacob on a Tuesday, and a Wednesday I get Maddie, and vice versa. And it's not inappropriate to sleep with my kiddo. Like we're completely like we're dressed, or it's my child. So I don't think that's inappropriate. I do, but at the same time, I can tell you that they're getting adequate sleep. So I feel comfortable doing that. And it's a special occasion thing. I might not sleep as well, but I could deal with it on vacation during a work day. Go to your own bed. And they do, but it's kind of to each his own. How can you help with ADLs through county services for 10 to 11, 2 boys with autism? Okay, I can tell you that the County Board of DD might be able to help with regards to OT, occupational therapy. Some of the counties, if you're in Cuyahoga County Board of DD, there is a group called the BCIS. It's the behavior, I'll put it in here, BCIS, Behavior and Curriculum Intervention Specialists. It's my former department. They are all, it's Summit. I'm not sure if they are in there. Cuyahoga County has BCIS department, which will help with ADLs. Summit County may or may not have DD supports. A lot of kids can, if they have Ohio Medicaid, they can get home and personal care services through the state plan as well. They may not have the skills that Emily and I have, either as an intervention specialist or behavior analysts, which we have both of, but they are able to help with performing the tasks. And you might want to ask an occupational therapist or a behavior specialist to develop the plan, and then they can be support providers. I can tell you guys at BCI, when I was in the BCIS department, I had a probably 16-year-old who was not bathing independently and wanted to. So part of our plan, and I went with a bathing suit on, and we went to the Solon Community Center with parent permission, and I taught her how to bathe. And we did it in that setting, because with her, teaching her by vocally explaining it was not going to be enough. She needed the practice and the guidance, and I gave her tips and tricks. So absolutely ask the board at DD. You can call the intake. You can also potentially have like a company like us, Accessing Abilities. We do a lot of ADLs. We have programs on them back here. We didn't really go into a lot of specific programs, but those are important skills, and we want them to be as independent as possible. It's a human dignity thing, and we all want to be as independent as possible. CareSource state workaround. Yeah, CareSource will cover ABA services if it's medically necessary. Perhaps OT services, but I don't know if they would go into the home. If you guys have other ideas, please share them too. Teachers might as well. I mean, it's something to talk to. I'm not making any promises, but it's something to talk to the IEP team and see if this would fall under the educational realm with regards to learning those skills and being as independent as possible too, depending on the needs of the learner that might be on the table. And CareSource is the one of the state insurance plans.
Okay. Rachel and Emily, thank you so much for your education and your experience and your time. We totally appreciate you coming out tonight. For anybody who attended, look for a recap tomorrow along with this recorded webinar. Everybody have a safe and wonderful night. Good night.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you, Wendy.
Certainly.